Welcome to Money Talks with me, Gerald, Mr. G. Mwandiambira, a show that is there for us to have those day-to-day money conversations we sometimes ignore or do not know enough about to tackle. So today we're talking about black tax, one of those topics which we talk about with our families and friends. Some of us know about it, some of us don't know as much. And to tackle this topic, we've got Eunice Sibiya, who's a wealth coach and expert with Sibiya Consulting, and Geraldine Mamburu, who's a marketing professional, and she also is living with black tax. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
We're talking black tax. What is black tax, Eunice, from your definition and your understanding?
Hey, that word can be defined in many words. Black tax is that financial commitment or financial strain for most people that is expected of people like Geraldine by family members and the community largely. That financial assistance that is usually imposed on you, usually you'd feel that way. Very few people are ready for it. And hence the word black, usually something that is criminal, unauthorized, unapproved, dodgy, has that black prefix to it, So, but it's largely or loosely that financial commitment or expectation from someone who is maybe a professional or someone who is employed by the rest of their family or maybe the community.
Now, the classic definition of black tax is actually not that. The classic definition of black tax is that for a black person doing equivalent work, a white person or someone from a previously advantaged background is remunerated more. So let's start with the classic definition, Geraldine. In terms of your field, marketing, does black tax exist where someone with similar qualifications as yourself from another advantaged background, do they earn the same as you?
I think in real terms, absolutely not. Because you'd find that at the end of the day, I'm sitting with student loans that I need to sort out. I still have family responsibilities that I need to take care of, and not just my family in terms of immediate, but extended family as well. So you find that when you do move into that corporate space with your other counterparts, they're just coming in as they are, and whatever they're getting in their bank account, that's for them to spend. And whereas mine ends up being portioned to all these different channels that I need to and debt that I need to settle.
So you're basically saying that for previously advantaged groups, they have the advantage of race, plus they have the advantage of not having such a wide social network and family responsibility. Eunice, how far should I be worrying about family? Who should I be worrying about?
Should you be worried? Could be a question.
Exactly.
Because there are people that feel I should not be. And there's a class that comes from a family background that says, you're okay because we are fine, But on a larger scale, we should be worried because you'd find that, for instance, in my case, I'm the eldest. Maybe in your, I don't know, your family said exactly. So then naturally would be that expectation of financial assistance, right? And in this case, we'll talk about financial assistance. There could be assistance in many other spaces. You could have cousins and nieces from other provinces coming to stay with me because I'm in Gauteng. They think there's a better aspect or opportunity for them to find jobs. But back to the financial part of it, you should be worried because as Ubuntu refers, we need to help. Commit societal expectations, community expectations, that upliftment that is seen to be the right thing to do, and it is the right thing to do. But what then makes the whole thing spills over is maybe the extended expectation and maybe on my side, unplanned expectation. So the two worlds then when they meet together, it just becomes a mess.
Now, Geraldine, in terms of your experience, you're married, are the black tax expectations the same? So let's not even call it black tax. Let's call it family responsibility. Are the family responsibility expectations the same in terms of your side and your husband's side? And how do you manage it? Because clearly it's not my fault I've got more family than yours.
Look, I think it's one of those discussions we had to have before we actually decided to settle down and get married, to say, what other commitments do you have, outside this relationship and where we want to take this relationship further. And upon us deciding to get married, how much do you think you're going to be able to continue with that kind of support as well as my side? So I think, going back to what Eunice was saying, it goes back to that point as to how much are you going to be willing or able to continue supporting in terms of how far you're going in terms of financially. how much can you
So
extend.
it's a defined decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, you coach couples, Eunice. Do you find a lot of black couples or couples from previously disadvantaged groups struggle with family responsibility? And in terms of your viewpoint, what are the telltale signs of people who are struggling with it?
There's a lot of struggle, like Geraldine says, that we come from different family backgrounds and setups. My family could be smaller than my partner's, small as they are, but they have huge demands. And maybe he comes from a bigger family, but they are structured, and maybe people are employed, or people are just self-sufficient, or they are able to go out. They were brought up that way to say, no, I can't always be expecting money from Malume, Geraldine's husband. No, I must go out. So the dynamics differ. Family dynamics differ, but there are the financial constraints in most families from extended families, family members. So if you, the two of you, don't have, one, haven't had the communication and being open and honest, and number two, have a plan to say, how do we deal with the requests? Before you get to the yes and no, how do you receive the request? So if his family needs something, do they call Geraldine or do they call her husband? And the other way around. So there's also that layer that you can add to say, for transparency and maybe for control. Because if his family needs to ask for money from Geraldine, they're going to think twice. And her family have to ask for money from him, they're going to like, oh, Abuti, hey, how do I help? But, you know, if it's her mother, I'm sorry to make an example, she's like, eh, Ngwanaka, then it's an obvious thing, you know, she must run in some instances. So it does put a huge constraint. So they need to have a plan after they've communicated honestly and openly to say, how do we deal with this? Some families are like, as Dalganjal, and easy, I keep it, and what have you. But other family members like, look, they are my family, I need to. So it requires communication, honesty, and a financial plan.
Now, you spoke the words I was going to talk about now, financial plan. Geraldine, don't you find that a lot of people are using black tax or family responsibility as an excuse for poor financial planning? Because you want to say you are strained, yet you roll up in an S-Class hubby, you roll up in a 4x4 wife, you stay in a posh estate, and then you come and say you don't have money. How does it work? Because I think sometimes there's an element where people are making poor financial decisions and are hiding behind those poor decisions and blaming the family at large. Do you agree, or you think I'm being unfair?
Look, I think there's two spectrums to this thing. So in essence, the black tax is reality. It's a reality that us young black people, young black professionals are facing. And the challenge then also comes that I am also a young black professional. I'm looking at my peers. We mentioned earlier about different groups. We're coming into corporate, we meet together. I've got a group of peers that have come with generational wealth, right? And they're living this life. And I also feel like I've worked hard and I deserve to live like that. But in essence, I still have this responsibility that I also need to take off, which we are now coining as black tax, which is also family responsibility. So the challenge then comes to say sometimes, are you then making an excuse in terms of not financial planning because you're now trying to live up the life as per your peers, and you also have the family responsibility? So I think we need to look at it in two different aspects. So not entirely as an excuse, but it's something that we need to factor in.
Here's a challenge, Eunice, because if you go to a typical school where there's educators in the suburbs, where it's mainly previously advantaged teachers, and you look at the car park. You go to a similar school, Ekas, and you look at the car park. These are all educators. You've already alluded to the fact that the guys from the previous advantaged earn more. But if you went to the Kasi Park car park, you'd believe that the ones, Ekasi, earn more than the ones who are in the suburbs. I am more of the opinion that I think we're making poor financial decisions. Are we actually saying that previously advantaged groups who created generational wealth had no responsibility? Because to create intergenerational wealth, it's a responsibility in itself to think about your children. Where are we going wrong, Eunice? What are we missing?
Before I get to the point of what we're missing, I want to go back and say this financial responsibility is global. It's a global phenomenon. Yes, with us, it's complex because of our complex nature as maybe the black race. Our families are larger, we have issues of employment and education and what have you. But let me tell you, it's not just a black thing that we need to have financial assistance or to provide financial assistance at home. You just said now that the generational wealth meant the previous generations in other races as well had to make commitments and sacrifices, I want to say, for the future generations to inherit something. But ours could be skewed a little bit because of the historic happenings and what have you. Back to the example that you've just alluded to of educators of two different pockets or two different classes, it comes from mindset. It comes from the generational feed and attitude, the money values that some of us maybe lack. So they came from a position where financial discussions maybe were not a secret. And some of them from the day they were born, there was an account opened for them. So the attitude toward finances is slightly, if not, actually it's different, much more different than ours. We came with poverty. And there was lots of hustling, happening at home. So I grew up with it. So when I'm at her stage, wanting to enjoy the privileges and the life that I've worked hard so hard for, at this point in time, then I get judged. But to your point of saying we aim big, some of us, I want to move out from Ekasi and live at a suburb that is very expensive and drive a car that matches the suburb and dress, the way it matches my lifestyle. But maybe my finances, after considering everything else, actually don't allow me to, because I now have maybe a bigger portion of extended family financial responsibilities than my counterpart. But on paper, we are equal. Maybe we earn more or less, we are in the same income bracket. So I could, in essence, qualify, afford that lifestyle. However,
my responsibilities won't allow that. We'll touch on that and carry it on into the next segment, because I think you're also starting to get into the psychology of money. And I'm going to start asking some of those questions in terms of how should we be thinking. Join us after the break as we continue our conversation on family responsibility, commonly known as black tax. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Money Talks with Gerald, Mr. Jimwandiambira. And today we're talking black tax, which I'd rather call family responsibility. And in studio, we've got Eunice Sibiya of Sibiya Consulting. She's a wealth expert and money coach. And we've got Mamburu, who's Geraldine. What a beautiful name.
I know, right?
what is it doing?
Geraldine Mamburu, who's a marketing professional, and she's a wife and mom, and she's dealing with black tax. Now, before we closed, we were starting to talk about the psyche, the way we think. Now, I'm going to ask a question to you, Geraldine. Do you think that maybe we don't love ourselves enough as black people in terms of how we see money? And I'm going to give you an example. When you are successful, the first thing you want to do is leave the house. Other groups and other cultural groups are happy to stay with siblings as long as it takes. What's this thing which drives us to leave the nest before we are ready? And in your case, again, I know you're a diasporan, you left your country to come here. What drove you to leave all your family there, come here, and then complain about sending them back money?
Well, I think the first answer to that is greener pastures, right? Outside always seems better. So you're at home, there's rules, and you have to go according to, what the parents say, and, whatever little is there is supposed to be shared amongst the many. So the moment I feel that I am somewhat self-sustaining, if I can call it that, then I feel let me be in my own space and let me be able to enjoy, the fruits of my labor. But again, like you mentioned, then you still left the family behind. And at the end of the day, they also feel, okay, you've gone over to the greener pastures. So either we want to come and share those pastures with you, or, give us some fruit from their pastures. So we want to, so it's the interesting dynamics.
Okay, so that's goes now to psychology. I mean, this is one of the things you talk about a lot, Eunice. How do we reset our thinking so that we can start being okay with ourselves? Because sometimes merely not coping with money has nothing to do with family responsibility. It has nothing to do with anyone else except how you see yourself in the mirror.
So dealing of money matters taps into the psyche, it taps into the emotions. And then there's me, the individual. Who am I and how do I deal with money? But what is my background? What has my background done or inculcated in me the poverty that I grew up with, what has that taught me, or what baggage am I dragging, based on my past? And all of those components that I've just listed will determine how I engage with money today, will determine how I engage with people outside, my relationships, work, siblings, love, you name them. There's an influence and a spillover of my past into where I am today. Some people will say, I grew up very poor, so right now because I'm working born, things must happen. I'm making up for lost time. That would lead into the over-indebtedness that we see today. So the majority of us were never taught money values. What does money mean to me? What does wealth mean? Because for most people, as soon as you say wealth, they think rich people, many zeros, they have, they see cars, houses, beautiful stuff. And if I don't have those things, that means I'm not rich. Rich is relevant. I mean, relative, I want to say.
It's relative to who you are. Now,
to who you are.
You are obviously in that environment, The millennials say, I didn't ask to be born, so don't ask me to send money. Now, in your experience, Geraldine, in your social circles, how bad can it get? Have you seen people who've really been hit hard in terms of family responsibility? And what's the worst case you saw?
Well, I'll share a story of a very good friend of mine. You grow up in a family, she lost her parents, and there really wasn't any immediate family to look after her and her siblings, and she was pretty much from matric forced to become an adult. So you've got this 18-year-old having to look after her brother and her younger sister, and she had to put them through school. And so sometimes, it goes back to, in as much as you might want to be selfish in terms of you've gone and gotten your education and you're earning your money, but you look at then the family, the African family values that we are brought up with. Do I then just go and start living this life? And yet I've got, siblings who are going through the circumstances that we're in that really didn't ask for it. So sometimes you have to throw in that Ubuntu-ness into things, in as much as we're millennials and we didn't ask to be here. But there's still that the African values that we're brought up with that we just can't negate.
So is she okay financially now?
I think she's doing great now.
And her siblings?
Or they've left the nest.
So everyone's happy.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful story.
It's a good story, that one.
Yeah, yes.
African values and financial services. I'm going to throw this one to you, Eunice, as well. For many years, you were in consumer education for one of the larger banks. I feel that the banks are not doing enough in terms of giving us black tax or family responsibility solutions. And I'll give you an example. Bank accounts for individuals. The only thing, investments, individuals, retirement, individuals, dying, family. We have a remnant of the old way of thinking where for us previously disadvantaged groups, we now only have one product which speaks to our Ubuntu, and that's bearing each other. Why do we not have a group bank account? Why do I not have a family retirement plan? Why do I not have a family investment? Why is it that us, who are in the majority, are not asking for these things? Because ultimately, the system was designed to cater for a group who are still there, and they're happy. How do we drive that conversation, Mam Eunice, in terms of saying, what can we do to change? Because I'm really passionate about that, to say, as much as we are in this situation, I don't think we're doing enough to ask for the things we want.
Passionate, you and I together. So it takes the two groups to come to a dialogue, into a dialogue. On the extreme, on the one side, we have the financial institutions and the products that they're designing with us in mind, some for their own strategies. Then you have the consumer for whom the products are designed. So there needs to be a very clear, big portion of ground where the institution, the financial institution, has to understand me and my needs, my background and my future, and design a product that will cater for this journey. Me, the consumer, the individual, and my family and the community, etc., we need to be informed and be in the knowledge to say, what is it that we need to help us succeed, to correct the ills, for now to survive and be ready to prepare for the future. Then when you go and demand, if you have to demand anything, you demand with authority because you are informed, you have plans. So the two parties need to come and meet halfway.
So
we have group accounts, by the way, your stokvels that most of the bigger financial institutions have. And there are many people out there who use those services, but you still have a larger component of group stokvels and burial groups that still prefer to exchange, to transact in cash. It's a topic for another day. But I'm just saying that there are products that are in development and they've been around for group saving, although they're not enough in terms of the journey, the financial journey that we want to see taking off, particularly for our communities.
So we need to see more of these group products.
Absolutely.
Now, Geraldine, with your husband, do you budget? And in your budget, is there a family responsibility line? And have you ever had to say no to a family responsibility request?
Well, it's always easier if it's not really affecting you directly, right, to say no. But you know what, I think it goes back to what Ma'am Eunice was talking about in terms of you need to have that open communication, right, in terms of if we do need to be you know, to be channeling money towards family responsibilities, how do we go about it? Is it just a matter of always saying, yes, we're going to do it, or yes, we can only do this much, or no, we can't do it at all? And also, in terms of our extended families, who do they ask for the help? So like what Ma'am Eunice was saying, you'd find that if my mother, as an example, was to approach my husband, you
She'll get it.
Exactly. You know, it's a lot easier, and she's also not going to feel like I'm just going to get it, you know, I'm just going to get what I want. And also vice versa, if it's, say, my mother-in-law, for example, she was to come to me, she has to really think about it.
So when your family goes to him, his goes to you, isn't this now manipulation we're talking about here? Because this is now playing with each other's minds.
Not really
Not
manipulation, right? But
because
before then
here.
they come to us as a couple, they will really need to go back and think, do I really, really need to go and ask this young couple for this money?
So as a young couple, you've been able to say no?
In instances we have,
Okay.
you know, I mean, it's not always the easiest, but I think sometimes you need to be selfish, if we can call it that, because, you know, they talk about the sandwich generation, which is where we find ourselves, you know, where I still then have to think of the needs of my little one, where, you know, the future that I want for her, in as much as I still want to help my family, which is above me. So it has to be a fine balance. It has to be a fine balance.
Now, in terms of that balancing act, perhaps as your parting shot, Eunice, let's talk about what advice would you give to people who are struggling with this black tax family responsibility conundrum? How can they deal with it? Especially, we've heard of situations where it's not happy stories. I'm in debt because of student loans, and the child doesn't even go and pass on top of everything.
Yes.
You pay until third year and then they drop out. How do we help each other, and how can we help those who maybe are struggling?
It all boils down to proper financial management for the individual and for the household. So we need to get to a point where we master financial management for ourselves and our families. My personal goals, the family goals. Where are we going and how are we going to get there? What are the timelines that we've set for ourselves? What is it that we're planning to achieve? Then if you know that you do have those responsibilities where from time to time or even monthly, you have to part with a certain amount of money to help at home if you really, really have to, then it better be a line in your budget because you know it's coming. But for the ad hocs, someone is going to a party and someone is whatever, there's a ritual and things that come unexpected and maybe some proper, genuine emergencies, then how do you deal with those? This is where now you'll get that phone call to say, hey, this has now happened. I need money for this. Do you have reserves because you know they are coming? Or do you feel it's your duty to cater for them? Or you're just going to say, tough, not this time?
Well, that's the burning question. Is it really your duty to take care of your family? Is it really your responsibility? And when can you say no? We've spoken about the need to set your family goals, your personal goals, the responsibilities which you need to cover, and your financial capability, which is perhaps the most important thing. How capable are you? It's always going to take sacrifice, commitment, and discipline to meet the needs of your family and indeed to deal with black tax or family responsibility. We could talk for ages, but unfortunately we're out of time. Thank you, Eunice Sibiya from Sibiya Consulting, wealth coach, money expert, Geraldine Mamburu, who's a mom, wife, black tax expert now. Thank you for joining us on Money Talks. I'm Gerald, Mr. G. Mwandiambira. Till next time, see See you.